Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Zapponi. I'm the CEO of ECHO, otherwise known as the Educational Council of Homeowners. I want to thank all of you for participating in this Ask the Experts, a case for well-maintained communities. ECHO is a 51-year-old statewide nonprofit association established to support HOA board members and engaged homeowners. Our mission is to foster a better quality of life in associations through education, advocacy, and connections. For this event, I would like to ask the participants to mute their mics and turn off their cameras during the general sessions. Thank you. For today's event, we have a few housekeeping items. These are now presented on the screen. This slide deck was sent to all registered attendees prior to today's webinar. Please take a moment to review our housekeeping items. They should be on your screen now. And today we have a very large audience of HOA board members. In lieu of our normal Q&As sessions, you will be able to directly ask your questions of the presenters and sponsors during our breakout sessions. So you'll do that in the breakout sessions. Please use the chat feature to report technical issues and to communicate directly with other participants in the webinar. We do not monitor the chat conversations for questions. Now, let me direct your attention to your monitor where you'll find our disclaimer. None of what is said during this seminar shall be construed as specific legal or expert advice from the speakers, sponsors, or ECHO. If you wish specific advice, we encourage you to contact your attorney or another suitable expert and ask them. The information we provide during this webinar is educational in nature and should not be relied upon for specific decision-making purposes. The breakout sessions are going to be semi-private, and you'll be able to ask your questions specific to your community there, but then probably a follow-up email or call would be appropriate so that they can learn about your specific situation. The general sessions are for everyone, and it should be general in nature. And I want to thank you for coming to this webinar and seminar. This webinar and all of our events are made possible by the generous support of ECHO HOA professional service providers. Join me in thanking today's registration sponsor, the Levy Erlinger and Company LLP CPAs, and our breakout sponsors, United Property Services, Inc., MindMe Technologies, and Bimini Corporation. Please support all ECHO professional members and especially our sponsors. They make our educational programming possible to all at little or no cost. And now let's learn a little bit more about our presenters today. United Property Services, Scott Swinton. I believe he has a slide that we're presenting now. And Scott is in the construction management world, and we're really happy to have Scott with us. MindMe Technology, that's Human Bolandi, is here representing MindMe and have technological solutions for your HOAs, managing inventories of assets and other imitems. Bimini Corporation has Sonia Bacchus is here, and Mark is also joining her. But Bimini Corporation, or Corp, Bimini Corp, represents and handles document management. She did a webinar a few weeks ago now, and with Amy Tonetti, was one of our most highly attended webinars of the year. So very interesting information and good information. So let's go ahead and begin the program, and I'm going to throw this over to Scott. Scott, you're on.
All right. Can I be heard? I guess that's first.
Yes.
You're all good, Scott.
Very good. All right. Well, first of all, thank you, ECHO. I think all of us who are presenting owe you a debt of gratitude because our customers need you. And so thank you very much for everything that you guys do. And you've given us 20 minutes, and I've got about 20 hours worth of content that I could present. So I'm going to fly. If you want more information on anything, join me in the breakout room. But put on your tennis shoes because we're going to run fast. The topic today is a case for a well-maintained community. And so what really is the case for a well-maintained community? And I think, I kind of broke it down on 4 criteria. Protect the asset, right? I mean, that's the case that should be made, is we're maintaining this community so we can protect this asset. We want to be a responsible fiduciary, and you as the board member need to make sure that you're making good decisions, and keep this community well maintained. You want to maintain relationships. Your neighbors care whether or not your community is well maintained. It's their house, it's their front door, it's their roof, it's their landscaping, it's their pool also. And then if you want to create a really low bar, don't get sued. Make decisions in maintaining your community so that the other shareholders, the other equity players in the community don't look at you and say, why have you made this decision? So, the case for a well-maintained community can be made pretty simply in about 30 seconds. On the other hand, a case for a well-maintained community is not so easy, in that, how do you maintain these communities? And I want to spend a little bit of time on a few points. Number one, we're going to do a little really fast history, and then I'm going to give you some ideas about what went wrong in the past, what you can do to kind of prepare for the future. The very conversation of a well-maintained community kind of gives a nod to human nature. It's hard to plan ahead. As a human, it's hard to invest. We're thinking about today. It's hard to work in the best interest of the future. And let's just face it, it's hard to work in the best interest of somebody else's future, because a lot of us know that what we own today in our condo or our townhome, or this home that we're in this community, may not be mine in 10 years. It may be somebody else's. The reason we might choose to not maintain could be the cost to me now is greater than I'm willing to spend. Again, I may not be here in 10 years. If you're a board member, it may be that my neighbors won't like me because of the decision I'm about to make today about maintaining our community. And it could be ignorance. I don't know what's going wrong. I don't know what was done wrong in the past. Therefore, I may not know what is the right way to maintain my community, and therefore you may not do it correctly. And really, it's on that last point that I'm going to spend some time. The 2 first points are more philosophical, and we don't have a psychiatrist on the line right now to help us with that. But what we do have is me. I understand building construction. I've been repairing and maintaining communities for the last 20 plus years. And there are some key points that I've begun to see over time that I'm going to bring out today. And number one, what was cooked into your community to begin with that is making it difficult to maintain it well today? How exactly was maintenance performed in the past, and how does that affect your decisions today? Was it a skilled technician that came in and replaced, say, the siding or the roof, or was it a handyman and maybe they were just doing patches? And then what is the effect of that today? So let's go to our first slide. So the period of time, I'm just going to read this. Period of time when most of the HOA communities were being built in California was a time of transition between old world quality and contemporary efficiency. Hold that thought in your head, that we saw the majority of the construction of these structures built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in a time when technology was changing. If I can go to the next slide. I'm going to give you a really rapid history of HOA construction, and then I'm going to give you some data points on why your communities may have been built poorly, why they were maintained poorly, and then what to do about that. Let's start with why were these buildings poorly constructed. You can almost summarize it in 2 points. One was rapid construction, and one was a change in building technology. So in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was rapid construction for a couple of reasons. Number one, high demand. Single-family homes are still desired, but some of you remember, I don't, but higher interest rates means that everybody's looking for a cheaper home. Prop 13, 1978. The state legislature basically put a cap on property taxes. Therefore, the municipalities are lacking the income that they had before. And suddenly the idea of multifamily, building a lot of structures on a small piece of land and getting the tax revenue from each of those individual pieces was very appealing. So developers saw an opportunity and they capitalized on it. So in 1960, there were about 5,000 HOAs in the entire country. Today, there are over 55,000 in California alone. And a huge percentage of that inventory was built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Who cares, right? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it's that first concept I told you about. The old world concept of high quality and durability meets a demand for efficient construction and rapid construction. I can't explain that any better than in the final point down at the bottom of the screen in caulk in a tube, and I'll get there in a second. So government is making changes. So the EPA comes into its own. They make decisions about lead paint. So what's wrong with lead paint? Well, lead paint is really good at a lot. Well, let's just say lead. Lead is really good at a lot of things. They put it in gasoline. They put it in many, as an additive to many products. Paint was one of those things. Lead paint was very effective at protecting our buildings. Unfortunately, it's also damaging the brains of our children, and rightly so. They ban lead, and especially they take it out of paint. What does that do to our structures today? Well, you can see much of the damage we see, and I'll kind of be demonstrating as we go through this whole presentation, is an effect of water on the structure, especially water on steel and wood members. And when they pulled an excellent product from the market, the engineers, the architects, the building designers all had to scramble to find new products to perform the way the old ones were. Asbestos, the same thing. Asbestos is fantastic for accomplishing a lot of purposes. Unfortunately, it also kills us. So that gets pulled from the market in 1,000 products. Engineers, architects, building designers are all scrambling to find new ways of protecting our buildings. This is all happening in the late 70s, the early 80s. Exactly the same time when developers are hell-bent on building buildings as fast as they can and getting homeowners into them. Caulk in a tube. What does that have to do with anything? Well, you've got all these changes happening, and where a carpenter in the 30s has to build with very exacting joinery so that his building doesn't leak. In the 1960s, DAP Corning comes up with a product which is caulk in a tube. And the carpenter of the 1970s is handed this product. He's told, build rapidly, and if you go too fast and the joint isn't quite right, just fill it with caulk. And we can all go downstream. I don't have to explain the effects of that. Downstream effects are water intrusion in buildings. Think of it another way. If a carpenter builds a building pre-caulk in a tube and there's a leak, they know it immediately. The water's coming in, they solve the problem. But if you've put caulk in those joints, it's going to be 3 or 4 years before that early version of caulk fails and the water starts seeping in and starts rotting behind the structure, behind the surface. Maybe the maintenance that's done is they see that the caulk is open and they put more caulk on it and it buys it 3 more years and the water starts coming in again. Again, you're all smart. You can see the downstream ramifications of that. You've got cancer behind the surface. Let's go to the next slide. So those were the causes behind the poor construction of the building. What are the causes behind the historically poor maintenance of the buildings? Well, obviously, you've got a focus on what's in your face, the obvious, and neglect of long-term budgeting. And this is not a critique of your previous board members in your community. I can't say that if I was on your board, I would have made any different decisions than they made. But in retrospect, I can see that number one, the dues and assessments obviously didn't keep pace with inflation. And why is that even important? Well, like I said, you had cancer growing behind your siding. You had cancer growing underneath the shingles. And there's these items out there that are, you can see the assessments not keeping pace with inflation, not keeping pace with that cancer under the surface. Don't allow enough money to make good maintenance decisions. The money drives who might be maintaining your community and how much maintenance is done. Let me just give you a quick example. Suppose you have some siding going bad on the side of one of the condos, especially let's say it's on the second floor. You're going to send out a handyman with a ladder and he's going to climb up there and he's going to fix the siding. That's going to cost $300, inflation adjusted. Maybe the solution was actually a $3,000 modification to a piece of flashing or a scupper from a roof downspout, or some other significant structural change that should have happened to solve the underlying issue. Or maybe it was a $30,000 fix. It doesn't matter. The $300 fix is what was done. And even 20 years down the road, the idea of spending $3,000 or $30,000 to fix the underlying issue either didn't occur to the people making the decisions, or the funding wasn't there to do that fix, so the $300 fix was done. And again, you're smart. You can see down the road. What is that repair today? Well, if it had been addressed then, the $300 fix would have been scrapped for the $3,000 fix, and you'd have realized that all 40 buildings need this $3,000 fix, and it would have been a blow, but it would have been a $120,000 blow. What actually is happening now is that we're getting into it, and today you, the sitting board members, are looking at a $300,000 fix because what wasn't understood 20 years ago has grown into the cancer that has rotted out all of the walls on that side of the building, or maybe two sides of the building. So it was a focus on the obvious, not understanding that reserving, well, let's go to the reserve study, that enough money needed to be reserved for a much larger repair. Early reserve studies did not properly forecast all potential maintenance needs. This almost goes without saying. Every reserve study that you guys are looking at misses a handful, if not a large handful, of maintenance and repair items. It is just the nature of the beast. Some of the components never were in the reserve study. And then the bigger piece, the piece that is hurting most of my customers today, is that much of what's being repaired are 50-year. Should have been on a 50-year reserve study. So say, for example, the retaining walls may have never gotten in the reserve study because they're not slated for failure in 30 years. Except that they are going to fail in 50 years. So we can all do the math. 20 years in, those retaining walls should have gotten onto the reserve study. The French drains around the building, they're not a 30-year reserve item, but they are a 50-year reserve item. And in 20 years, they should have gotten on the reserve study, and they're not there. And those type items are destroying the budgets of our customers today. Let's go to the next slide. I see I have 6 minutes, so I'm going to fly. We already talked about this, the handyman special, treating the symptoms and not understanding that there's a disease. Let's go on to the next slide. So what are the effects of poor construction? I'll just take these three pictures. On the left, you see like a 2,000 square foot stucco wall. So number one, there were inadequate overhangs. There's so much of the inventory, multifamily inventory in the Bay Area has no overhangs. And so the water just runs right down the side of the building. Not a problem if the stucco never cracks, right? except that there are no control joints or expansion joints in 2,000 square feet of stucco either. So all of the cracks are a conduit directly to the inadequate building paper. The building paper deteriorates and now the walls are rotting out. That's poor construction. Now, you saw the flaw there. There's also poor maintenance involved there too. The crack should have been caulked. The wall should have been painted. And so one of the solutions of maintenance along the way was put elastomeric paint over the whole wall. Except that created mold issues because now you've just shrink wrapped your building, and a lot of those buildings ended up with mold and moisture issues. The second picture, improper flashing. From day 2, this balcony was leaking because the flashing was installed improperly, and it was rotting out that header and the jacks beside the garage door. Exposed members were not protected. I mean, thank you to the architects of the 1970s for all of these extended beams and arbors sticking off the side of the buildings. And they thought that it was beautiful, except they never protected the top of that beam. Not a problem, except that that beam extends 20 feet into the building. And to replace it is highly disruptive to the owners of the building and extremely expensive. Let's go to the next slide. Effects of poor maintenance. Well, of course, the dry rot. All of these pictures have been a case study of a community in San Rafael, where we went through and replaced thousands of square feet of siding, tore off thousands of square feet of stucco. And the siding is simply, the damage and the rot to the siding is simply an effect of never properly prepping the siding for paint, or when it was painted, poor quality paint, very rapid installation of it. And all of that could have been avoided if they had just simply been painted properly. I give the example all the time. I hand a customer my credit card. I say, if you put a coat of paint on that every few weeks, you can leave that on your patio, and my business card will be imperfect, and you're not going to get my credit card. But you can do my business card, and you put paint on that every few weeks, and it will stay in perfect condition forever inside that paint. But if you let that sit out there, that paint's going to go away, and eventually my business card is going to rot, just like the siding. Deck coatings, the same concept. And again, you're going to see a theme here, in that water is always the ally of entropy to destroy your community. And it's asphalt, roofs, siding, all of these, the pool deck that you're dealing with, you add the chlorine to the water and exponentially worse. But even stuff like your clubhouse and your amenities, the toilets aren't working anymore, the cabinets are out of date, the carpet starts to smell, and you're like, nobody wants to be in the clubhouse anymore. It's a maintenance item. These are the effects of poor maintenance. Let's go to the next slide. Impact on today's budgets. You don't have enough money. Next slide. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. You just don't have the money to do the work you need. What is the case for moving forward with a dedicated purpose of maintaining site structures well? This is what it is. I just take the first two in reverse order. Rely on experts. What can we do now to make up for lost time? Rely on experts. And that expert may not be your attorney. Your attorney has great advice, but you may need to bring in an architect to tell you what is the next best thing to do. For example, what if you have a boiler on your roof or in your basement and it needs to be replaced or it failed? Who do you bring in? You might need to bring in a mechanical engineer. The mechanical engineer is going to look at it and say, here's the purpose it's supposed to serve, and here is how it should be operating, and here's the best solution in today's available inventory of products. Whereas if you call in your plumber, he's going to replace it with the same product. Bring in the experts. Rely on experts to give you an opinion of what and how before you bring in the contractors to tell you how much. And then triage wisely. bring in consultants who can tell you these are the items that are most important. And I get it. This is on your reserve study right now, but these are the items that are most important for you to start now. It might be your asphalt. It might be your roof. It might be something that you're not even focusing on right now. Bring in experts to help you understand exactly what it is you should be doing. 2 final points. I know I'm out of time. Number 1, plan all of your assessments with a healthy contingency. If you have money left over, put it in the bank. But always, no matter when you're raising money, for what you're raising money, make sure you have plenty of contingency in there. And then educate with a purpose. And this is my nod to Echo. Echo is the only organization that I know of who's bringing the information to where the information's needed. And that's you, the homeowners, the board members. And we have, what did I say? 55,000 communities in California alone. Multiply that by how many different board members, multiply that by how many different owners. They all need to understand the ramifications of poor maintenance. If they do, then your future is going to be much better. Thank you, guys. I look forward to talking to some of you in the breakout session.
Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Human Balandi.
Good afternoon, everyone. Connor, thank you so much, and Dave, and I want to thank Echo, Scott, wonderful talk. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Human Balandi, and I'm the founder and CEO of MindMe Technology. And this afternoon, I'm going to talk about, as Scott talked about the effect of poor maintenance. We're going to talk about maintenance. And so in my talk, you're going to hear there are 3 main takeaways. Maintenance and why maintenance. And can maintenance help me not save money, but also can it help me make money, believe it or not? And last but not least, some use cases around the impact of having maintenance versus not having maintenance, and how technology can enable having a maintenance plan that fits the uniqueness of the community. If you could please go to the next slide. So really, we talked about the technology, and my talk this afternoon is going to be about benefits of technology managing community maintenance and really ensuring the community assets and that the assets are being protected. And if you could go to the next slide, when you really look at from a CAI's perspective, what is a board mission? It's 3 words: protect, maintain, and enhance. And if you could go to the next slide. And as you can see, the word maintenance, Connor, could you please keep going? The word maintenance really it's embedded in the word maintain. And when you step back and ask yourself the question of how do I protect my asset, and it's really about preventive maintenance that shows up in that word. And we will go through what that means. And now talk about enhancement. It's really about the desirability and quality, and in a nutshell, it's about attractiveness. Scott talked about, okay, my clubhouse, carpet is smelling, or the bathrooms are not working due to lack of maintenance, and that's where it shows up. If you could go to the next one, please. Next slide. And really, when you think about it, are we familiar with maintenance? The answer is yes, we are. We go to the gym. Why? Because we want to make sure from a health perspective, we stay on top of our game. And we go to the dentist to do the same thing, to understand our health better. And yes, we do take our car to the mechanic. And guess what? All of this takes time, money, and resource. But do we do that for our community? That's the question. Not really. And when you really look at, next slide, please. When you really look at it, there are 2 schools of thoughts. One is, I'm being reactive. What does it mean? That means I'm firefighting and I wait till the last second looking for a hero. As a result, I'm going to be facing with a lot of special assessments, board recalls, the politics, bank borrowing, and from a protect, enhance, and the attractiveness of my community is going to go down. Now, when I look at the second school of the mindset, it's really about proactiveness. It's about planning, not so much the plan. The planning is what is important. And as a result, from a financial, environmental, and more important, from my community stability is going to be there for me. Now I'm going to have a healthy community that I'm going to live in it. And this is one of my favorite quotes. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So from a maintenance perspective, we all know about, in the next few slides, we're going to get some idea about preventive maintenance, but we know what that is. We have corrective maintenance and deferred maintenance. How can we forget the deferred maintenance? However, when you really step back and look at it, everything starts with inspection. Connor. And as a result, you inspect it once, and then you customize, get a customized plan together, and then you want to verify that, yeah, what I said I am going to do, I did it. If you could go please to the next slide. And so preventive maintenance, it's really about art and science behind understanding premature deterioration, understanding when and where I need to do some of these tasks. And yes, technology does play a role. If it was a brand new property or community, you can put a lot of sensors and monitor it. However, if it's a mature property, now the only thing is time, snapshot of that time, and then be able to do it in a different intervals so that you can understand, okay, over the course of 6 months, how worse or how bad or how how did it impact that crack that I had on the wall that earlier Scott was talking about? How is it impacting me now? So yes, technology can play a role. And if you could go to the next slides, please. And it's a classic case of, you inspected once and you enjoy it and use the data multiple times. So here are 3 case studies that you're going to see. And one of them is about roof. So if you really look at this case, it's a 30-year roof at a cost of $9 million, amortized over 30 years, which really translates into $300,000 per year. Now, you remember we talked about 2 schools of thought, reactiveness and proactiveness. On this slide, proactiveness is in green, reactiveness is in red/orange that you're looking at. So if I'm proactive about my maintenance, if I'm proactive about my frequent roof inspection and understanding my gutter and all of that, really I can gain life, extra 5 years life on the product, on the component. What does it translate into? Really saving money. Now, if I'm reactive and I don't do anything until the thing fails, it's actually going to cost me. And as you can see here, it's actually going to reduce the life of my component. As a result, it's going to cost me more. Next, so the use case is really about this property in San Diego. This is one property 1 mile away from the ocean, and it has 19 sub-associations. Also, there's a golf course nearby. And what the developer has done is put a metal fence between the community and the golf course. Of course, they forgot to do maintenance. And as a result, what happened over years, due to the fact that you have a combination of salt water and irrigation water coming in from the golf course, the metal fences started rotting from inside out. And they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace miles of fence, where it could have simply been saved by annual paint. We heard what Scott talked about. If you could go please to the next slide. This is one of my favorite case studies. A developer decides to build two communities right across the street from each other in San Diego. From an exterior and interior, they're copy exact. Number of units exactly the same. At the time when the average homes were about $400,000, okay, in that area. Community A decided to follow maintenance plan and decided to being proactive about it. And they saw a value increase, property value increase up to $150,000 or more, which really translates into over 33% of the gain they got. Now, property B decided, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to wait until things, fail because I'm reactive. As a result, they gone through special, the entire reserve that they had. They went through a special assessment. And by the way, halfway decided, you know what, let's adopt what community A is doing. It took them 10 years to catch up. So can you save money? The answer is yes. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please. So here what you see is now how technology can address the challenges of mature community and really under the umbrella of protect, maintain, and enhance. So, but what you see in today's environment, there are a lot of things on our mind. Yes, insurance, how can we forget that wonderful thing? Skyrocket cost of the insurance. The financial stress that we have due to the fact that, previous board did AYZ, and I really don't know any visibility about it, or the decisions they made now is impacting me. So financial stress is there. Yes, labor and material cost, high labor and material cost is there. And of course, deferred maintenance. How can we forget that? And compliances. Now let's talk about how technology can help us. When I step back and look at it, we buy a car, $20,000, $40,000, or $80,000. Doesn't matter the price. It comes with the engine light indicator. However, we buy a house. The question is, does it come with it? And can technology help me to have that indicator? The answer is yes, because now with technology, you can actually thoroughly assess the current situation. Again, I'm going to go back to the examples of what Scott talked about. The effect of poor maintenance, if you will, or the crack on the stucco that he touched up on. Now, all of those could be not only geotagged, but timestamped and dated, including, if you want your trees or the sidewalk. And more importantly, over time, it could be compared and say, okay, you know what, this sidewalk, the tree root is really lifting it. Go to the next slide, please. And you will see that how you can see the impact of, the tree root on the sidewalk. Next one, please. And at the end of the day, it's about understanding, one, where my risks are. Number two, where my issues are. Maybe this quarter or this half a year left, I don't have money. I know the entire section of the fence is bad, but I got 2 planks down. Can a contractor or handyman help me for this rest of the year or not? And more importantly, being able to not only capture violations, common violations, architectural violations, and more importantly, getting to the safety and maintenance conversation as well, so that you understand the complete risk and liabilities of it. If you could go to the next slide, please. And at the end of the day, it's really about understanding issues before they become structural problems. Now, here's an example of what technology, next 3 slides, you're going to see an example of what technology can do. I apologize, this picture doesn't do justice, but area A and B shows water sitting there 12 days after rain. The question is, did the water make it through the structure, yes or no? And as you can see with thermal, we can actually bring those technologies into conversation so you know exactly what's happening. So Scott and his team, for example, can come in and help you with it. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please. So here is an example of being able to identify safety and risks. So being able to know if I have trip hazards and keep clicking. Connor, yeah, there you go. So basically being able to know, okay, you know what, I have a sidewalk that is lifted due to tree root. And by the way, I need that to be addressed now rather than, 6 months when I have a couple of, letters coming at me. If you could go to the next slide, please. So here's another example of, keep kidding here. So here's another example of where we can actually bring technology into the conversation. This is a garage. And as you can see, underneath the air intake, you see a little bit of water. This is in a climate where it's 97-degree out, and the question is why water is still in my structure or in my wall. And the root cause of it, keep clicking. The root cause of it was really about the planter box / irrigation system. So if you go to the next slide. So when you get, when you get a report, really it's good to know exactly where the issues are so that you can actually know what to do. And when you do your statement of work or RFP, all of that would be ready for you.
Able to,
If you could go to the next slide.
Somebody needs to mute themselves.
If you could, Connor. Yeah. So there is a little video that you guys, if you could play it. So in this video, what you see is the ability, we talked about geotagging, ability to see from high up what's going on. Ability to see from high up what's going on. Not only be able to pick up violations, but also be able to pick up, for example, dry rot and, some maintenance areas like, irrigation issues that you see, you see yellow patches, faded paint, broken fence. And more importantly, later on, you're going to see how it actually can help you with the report. Not only that, but also be able to get you severity as well as the estimated cost. So again, come back to what Scott was talking about, knowing the impact and the effect of it. And more importantly, now Scott's team can come in and help out. And here's a report, as you can see. Next slide, please. So at the end of the day, really, it's about understanding the risks and liabilities, and more importantly, how best can I improve the property value that I manage, if you will, and really minimizing and all the extra cost that comes with emergency repair costs due to not doing my maintenance and waiting till the last second. And at the end of the day, if I have a underfunded community that I'm worried about, this can actually help you to become funded. And if I have a funded community, this actually can help you to become well-funded. And so at this point, I will stop my presentation and thank you for your time.
And so right now we had a really good conversation about Firewise, and I believe that Sonia is gonna speak a little bit to that, and Mark. So Mark and Sonia, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Connor. Thank you, Echo, and thank you all the board members for being here. We are thrilled to be participating in this Echo Ask the Experts. My name is Sonia Backus. I am the CEO of Bimini Corp. And to Vicky out there, congrats for getting the name right off the bat. We were in that early chat room and you said, Bimini Corp. And we've had people say by Mini and Bill Bimini. So good job, Vicky. It is Bimini Corp. And I was an association manager for 18 years. And about 4 years ago, Mark and I founded Bimini along with one other partner. Our mission is to provide targeted solutions for association management. And we are here today to talk about long-run strategies for fire mitigation. I know that Scott and Hunan spoke a lot about deferred maintenance, and we want you guys to recognize that protecting the community from fire can be just as valuable. So I want to turn it over to Mark, and Connor, you can go to the first slide. Mark, are you there?
sorry.
You're on mute.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. Sorry. Long-term fire prevention planning is kind of a no-brainer for everybody in California. You just have to look across the state at any given time. I mean, almost any time of the year to see examples of why fire prevention in wildfire mitigation efforts are so important. HOAs in particular have a little bit of an issue, I will say, and it's been alluded to a couple of times here so far, and that is there's a certain amount of sometimes it can be apathy, it can be a little bit of it won't happen to me kind of thinking that happens inside of HOAs. But the nature of insurance, the nature of wildfire really is overtaking that kind of apathy these days. Along with your mold prevention and dry rot and other long-term reserve study kind of issues, the fire prevention planning part of it, preparation part of it, engagement of your homeowners should be right up there along with your dry rot mitigation projects. Currently, the state of California is recognizing fire hardened communities as a model or as a standard, if you will, for insurance purposes, and in the long run is also a recognition, a nod to the kind of defensible space that might be in place should a wildfire event occur. Firewise USA is a nonprofit out of the East Coast that deals a lot with setting standards for the entire country on fire protection, from sprinklers to fire hydrants to fire extinguishers to electrical codes, and wildfire has become a natural extension. They have taken essentially what are defensible space kinds of metrics and created a recognition for communities and a set of standards, if you will, and a process that communities can participate in to be recognized in their fire mitigation efforts. A lot of times, insurance companies, agencies from the state level on down are painting with a rather broad brush and saying, you live in this area and you have this kind of terrain, therefore you get this kind of insurance category. And what's happened is that has been met with enough resistance and enough blowback so that they're starting to recognize more of the work that's being done from the ground up. And communities such as HOAs are ideally situated for really encapsulating the work that's being done, qualifying it with metrics that make sense, with metrics that are standardized, and then in the long run, using that information, using those standards to say, hey, we are taking steps, therefore we need recognition, not only with a certificate, not only with just a big Attaboy star, but also being able to perhaps get insurance and the possibility of perhaps some reduced rates.
Yeah, we were mentioning in the chat in the breakout session that we are hearing from some high-level association brokers. For those of you that have been through the pain of association policy renewal, that some of these designations, such as Firewise USA, may mean the difference between maintaining and or getting insurance and being able to actually insure the association's policies. So we think it's going to be an important designation for associations to consider. Associations in and of themselves are perfect candidates for becoming Firewise USA communities. We have done a lot of research. We've spoken to a lot of agencies, including CAL FIRE, county agencies, fire safe councils. And what makes associations perfect candidates is that they already have the governance and infrastructure. You have a board. You have the ability to form committees. You know how that works. You're already successful with that. You have skin in the game for being a well-maintained community, which means you understand the importance and what that means. You have a budget. You have the ability to spend money on fire-wise prevention activities. And that makes associations much more successful in becoming and maintaining this FireWise designation, which we think is of immense value. Okay, next slide, Connor, please. So what is a FireWise USA community? So FireWise is a volunteer program which provides a collaborative framework to help neighbors take action to reduce wildfire risk. It is a designation. It is not punitive. It is meant to be community-based from the ground up. It makes it a groundswell of action that moves from the bottom up, rather than from somebody saying, CAL FIRE coming in and saying, you need to clear your weeds. You now have a community engagement around this that that makes it a little bit different of a program and makes it more valuable for associations. It is administered by the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, as Mark mentioned. Associations are, as I also said, perfect candidates. And what makes this designation is important for associations is that, as we mentioned, you know, it's going to help with insurance. It's going to help with utilizing those community-based programs to help prevent wildfire and ultimately make your community safer in a catastrophic wildfire event, which is the most important piece. It encourages owners individually to understand their fire zone, to understand evacuation routes. All of those pieces are part of that FireWise USA educational piece. Okay, we talked about that. Mark, did you have anything to add for important designation for associations?
While we're talking, you know, in broad generalities, it sometimes gets lost in the, you know, so what does that mean to me kind of question. And when you look in more detail, again, if we had time and the space, et cetera, and we're certainly welcome, I've included a couple links there in the chat. When you start looking at the steps, it can be a little bit daunting up front. But I think what you're going to find inside of a lot of communities is there's a lot of recognition of, you know, simple things that we can start to do to make everybody safer in the long run. And while the local leader for a FireWise committee is kind of the point for a lot of the data gathering and stuff, really, it's been our experience that when a community really engages and embraces the idea that, hey, we need to go on the offense against fire, we can sit here and worry about it all the time, or we can start taking steps to make a difference. When the community engages, everything moves a lot faster and a lot smoother. And it's really, it doesn't cost you anything for the recognition, short of the time and the effort. Now, I give you, you know, if you're going to be clearing weeds and dropping trees and changing gutters, et cetera, I understand the nature of that expense. And you'd be surprised at how much grant money is being made available for those kinds of mitigations. But that FireWise recognition is, you know, it's a ladder, is a step, is a bridge into getting that kind of assistance.
Perfect. Connor, next slide, please. So requirements for becoming a FireWise USA community. So there's 5 basic requirements. First is forming a committee. And as we mentioned, associations have, you know, very simple mechanism and understand the process for forming a FireWise committee. The second is develop a risk assessment. We had a great question in the chat or the breakout session about, how this is going to be different for every community. So the community themselves, along with their local leader, who is the head of the FireWise committee, is going to take an assessment of the community and decide what are going to be the best fire hardening steps that we can take over the next 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. The third requirement is to create an action plan. So if we recognize that we have a heavy tree canopy, that we are going to say in year 1, we're going to clear this section. In year 2, we're going to clear that section. And the committee and the community itself are going to make a plan that moves them along towards better fire hardening safety practices. The fourth requirement is to engage the community. So we want everybody to recognize that being part of this process and being a good neighbor and helping with fire hardening practices makes it safer for everyone. So the requirement is that there is some engagement, that there's an educational event, a way for communities to participate in the process and individual members participate in the process. And then the last step is to apply for that recognition. And there's lots of resources around that part of the process. The NFPA has a lot of materials on that, but basically you work with a local agency, you establish your own recognition and portal with the NFPA, and then submit your information through that portal to them to obtain that recognition. Requirements for sustaining a FireWise USA community. So you have to spend hours and dollars. It is $29.50 per home per year. Again, another reason associations are perfectly in line with being able to do this. Many of the associations that we work with and that we have talked to, that is easy to do because they're already doing clearing in the common area or gutter clearing for the condominium gutters. So a lot of that becomes actions under the NFPA requirements. You have to hold an educational event. You have to continue to work on your action plan. So you have to see that you did in year 2 definitely make an effort to clear that tree canopy that you had designated in your action plan. You need to report back to the NFPA what you have been doing and what you plan to do. And then you need to renew that certification recognition every 5 years. Mark, anything to add to that? Because I know you've been in the weeds on the process.
No, that's that in a nutshell. That's accurate. There are, as Sonia mentioned, there's a lot of assistance out there. One of the big ones in California are the fire safe councils, and there are fire safe councils up and down the state that are local nonprofit agencies that are in place that get grant funding from OES, that get grant funding from CAL FIRE and a few other agencies to not only provide fire mitigation, fire safety tips and tricks, but also work very closely with FireWise communities to see what kind of resources they might need, what kind of expertise they might be able to share, how they might be able to connect with people in the know. So for example, in our county here in Nevada County, we've got a situation where their FireWise communities have their own or ad hoc organization that is also very important to maintaining the conversation, helping out with new FireWise communities, assisting with the process to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. So there are a lot of resources out there.
On our next slide. So there is paperwork involved. As I mentioned, Mark has been through this process, and we looked at ways to try and make this more manageable and easier for associations to become Firewise and to maintain that designation. So there are a lot of tools out there. There are a lot of resources out there. There are homegrown organizations that are working within your communities. So we have, Connor, next slide. As Mark mentioned, there are fire safe councils. Those are typically county organized. There are county government agencies. I know in Placer County, the Firewise Community Help falls under their one of their government departments. CAL FIRE is immensely involved and helpful in this process. They, as Mark might have mentioned, will be looking to be more involved in the Firewise process for California as it moves forward. The NFPA has a lot of information and resources available through them and through their website. And then there are software solutions, some available through county agencies, some that are independent and proprietary, but there are a lot of materials and ways to make this process easier. So don't be daunted. If you're looking for resources, I put our information in the chat, and I'm sure Echo can provide it. If you're looking for resources, we are happy to connect you with those that we have spoken to for your own individual counties.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you for participating in today's events. To everyone, we did wonderful job, good conversations, a lot of good conversations. And just to remind you all, if you're interested in connecting with one of the three faculty members or the people we have here that are speaking today, you're going to be receiving, or you should have already received, the slides, and their contact information is on the slides. You can also text us or contact Echo, and we'll be happy to let you know how to get in touch with them. You can go to our website at echo-ca.org, and we'll be happy to, it'll point you to their website and to their contact information on the website in our professional directory. So please go ahead and use that. The intention here is to connect people. That's one of the vision, one of the mission objectives of Echo. So thank you so much for participating today. So let me go on with my concluding remarks. To all of you who are Echo members, thank you so much for coming today and supporting our ongoing Echo webinars. For those of you who are not Echo members, please consider becoming a member and supporting HOA boards throughout the country. To join, simply go to www.echo-ca.org. That's www.echo-ca.org, and click on the membership tab. It'll lead you through the process. For Echo members, I want to say thank you for supporting us, and please invite your friends, boards, and especially those management firms and vendors to join Echo. A simple invitation is usually all it takes to encourage someone to join. If you would like to become more involved with Echo, we have a few opportunities for you. Please refer to the slide. You'll see some opportunities there. If you see anything that looks interesting, please give me drop me an email at dzapponi@echo-ca.org, and it would be a pleasure to see more volunteers with us. We do over 100 meetings a year, so we certainly can use some help. Now for other announcements. This year, Echo is launching its educational program focused on HOA board preparedness. The core curriculum of 10 courses is designed for high-quality training and is available for HOA board members, interested homeowners, and other professionals. Your participation in this program will earn you a certificate of HOA board member preparedness. I recommend it to everyone. You'll get 10 courses of really good information for running a board. The course will initially be offered live via webinar, with 8 of the 10 courses recorded, and if you miss one of the live programs, the course will be offered on demand as a recording. And so you will be able to take it at your leisure. If you or someone wants to enroll in the certification program, please send an email to Connor and he'll set you up. His email is on the screen now. So reach out to Connor. Our 2024 resource panels will continue into the fall. So we're kicking off the season with Wine Country Resource Panel, the North Bay Resource Panel. Wine Country is in Santa Rosa. The North Bay Resource Panel is in Novato, and the San Francisco panels on September 10th and 1st. We look forward to seeing you there. The San Francisco panel is in the evening, and we are going to be doing a wine event on top of one of the high rises there. So it should be a lot of fun. Sign up early. That one does sell out usually. It's free to HOA members, by the way. Echo is also planning 2 larger events this year. Once again, we want to thank all of our sponsors. If you are in Southern California, one of the events is going to be October 5th at the Laguna Hills Community Center. Like to see you there. And then we have another event over in Rossmore in Walnut Creek, and that'll be November 16th. And we hope to see you all there. Once again, thank you to our sponsors and thank you to our panelists. And of course, thank you to all of you for attending today and making this a successful event.